Good morning, everybody. It's your Self Show crew back for another Saturday morning podcast. We've got an interesting topic here today as we continue through our happiness series. This one is choose the right people to be part of your life. And as we always do, we're going to start with a quote. I think we all have quotes today. We're pretty quote centric over the last couple of podcasts. But I'm going to start with the people you surround yourself can either raise or lower your standards. Right. And I'm going to come at this as we're going to go around the horn here for a second, but I'm going to approach it from a kind of a evolutionary psychology perspective and put a little bit of a positive psychology spin on it and give you some practical examples from my space. But before we do that, let's let Derek give his initial comments.
Yeah, I'm going to come at it from the perspective of, you cannot change the people around you, but you can change the people you choose to be around. And I think that's an important distinction to make on this topic in navigating, associating yourself with the right people, and it comes back to lines a lot what you're saying, Patrick, around your standards and what it is you value, but you have to make sure you understand your values first and to know that you want to be with the right people, what those right people look like. So I think that's an important parallel there is, and the most important thing there is you cannot change people. You can only change yourself and you can only change who you want to be around and associated with based on what it is that you value relevant to yourself.
Yeah, and I think you're coming out of the gate really strong with your comment on values because everything we talk about on this channel is really align with your values and act with integrity and character. So well set up. Doug.
Yeah, I'll come at it with a pretty common quote, I think, is you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so that's Jim Rohn, just to give credit where credit's due. But, I think as we all go about our daily life, we tend to kind of gravitate towards certain people or other things like that. And at the end of the day, the people you spend the time with, you start to adopt their behaviors and attitudes, or you plus them starts to turn into kind of the person that you are. And a lot of your daily routines are often influenced by the people you're hanging out with. If they have healthy routines, you tend to have healthy routines. If they emphasize, I try to walk 30 minutes a day, it tends to rub off on you and things like that. So like, as you were saying, you likely sort of gravitate towards people of similar values and other things like that. But as you spend, by default, as you choose how you spend your time, you'll end up kind of adopting the similar behaviors and things to the people you spend time with.
Yep, nope, well said. To give a little bit of perspective, as to why this is such an important topic, right? Let's go back and talk about our ancestors for a second. Because back in the days, going back to the time when we lived on the savannas of Africa and that type of thing, is that if you chose poorly in your clan or you were ostracized from your clan or your group or your tribe or whatever, the likelihood that you would survive was very, very small. And of course, we don't live that way anymore. We live in a much more structured, safer environment, but that is part of our psyche. If you chose poorly in those days or you were kicked out or whatever, your chance of survival was very, very small. And so even today, that's reinforced or that comes about in our thoughts and our patterns, even subconsciously and that type of thing. And so the ability or making sure that, what is different today is that you have a choice, right? Back when we were on the savannas of Africa, you really couldn't choose your social network. Either you were in a group, you're out of a group, and you were in trouble. In today's world, thank goodness, we have the ability to choose those that we engage with, right? And that's really, really key because as we've all noted in our quotes and that type of thing, the people that you surround yourself, even if you're not aware of it, are impacting you in one way, shape, or form. And I think we've all experienced that. People that you may have fallen in with the wrong crowd, like in high school or in your work career, the people that are negative or the people that are positive or whatever. And you find yourself over time adopting those behaviors. And I think there was a study done, I don't remember the specifics of, it was a story of a guy that drove to work every day and he liked to listen to, I think, NPR or public radio. And his car broke down, so he had to get a ride with, a neighbor or whatever. And the neighbor was a country music fan. So, and this guy wasn't, right? He was more of a, a jazz, whatever, and public radio, that type of thing. But by the 4th day in, he found himself tapping his foot to country music as they were driving to work. Now, it's a little bit of a goofy example, but the people that you surround yourself with really, really do impact you. And I'll give you an example, and this is going back years, but a part of my early working career, one of the things that I noticed, I think this was an evening job while I was putting myself through college, was the fact that there was a crowd that was kind of the management team or whatever, very positive and get things done and that type of thing. And then there was another crowd that was very negative. Everything the management team did was wrong, and they're treating us poorly or whatever the case may be. And I kind of floated between the two. I don't know why, but I found myself the more I that I would take walks or hang out with the folks that were very negative towards everything, I saw things differently. I had a bias that was starting to develop that I found very unfortunate. And thankfully, I was able to catch myself and pull myself back from that. I had no idea about the topics that we're talking about today, but that was really solidified in my mind that the folks at work or in my social life or whatever that I choose to associate with, and you do have a choice, really impacts your life either positively or negatively. And another, key thing, and I'm, looking through, I'm actually taking a class on positive psychology with Dr. Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania. And one of the things that he talks about in his research is that the relationships that you have are one of the 5 key pillars of your well-being or happiness, right? The people that you're associated with. And a lot of that is because of things that we've talked about and are going to talk about, but also the ability to really depend on people. If you have genuine, authentic relationships, it's called reciprocal altruism, meaning that if you're helping or you're helping folks or you need help, similar experiences for you, Doug, or anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah. I think you made a lot of good points there. I feel like you were excited to really share about those points. Like a lot of the topics we talk about, like I think one of the key things here is stepping back, observing and recognizing like that you may have been choosing the people you're around more by default or just by it just sort of happened. And what we're saying in a lot of what we talk about is be mindful and observe, and then like you were just saying, be intentional about the people that you're around, because those people tend to influence the person that you are, and they tend to influence your level of happiness and those kind of things. So again, it's another plug for mindfulness, and then really connecting back to one of the themes from one of our prior episodes was around life is finite. And so, you know, one of the dimensions of happiness is the quality of your relationships, not the quantity of your relationships, and life is finite. So you again sort of reinforcing that point, like you need to be intentional about how you spend your time. Every moment you spend with one person is moments you could have spent with someone who maybe means more to you, or the relationship means more to you, or on your own personal pursuits of improvement and those kind of things. So this is just like many of our topics. You have to be mindful and be intentional and make sure you're spending time with the right people.
Yeah, well said. Derek.
Yeah, I'm gonna add a little different flavor here. I think as a gauge, you think about a gauge on a car, you check, how much gas you have, and you can see, where you are on that gauge. I think when you take a step back and look at, what it is that you gravitate to socially, like with people, whether it's your family, your friends, or your, coworkers, or your leadership team or something, is really, you can parallel that to the healthiest, best version how you show up. Like if you're not healthy and you're in a negative, a victim state, or you're in an abuse state, and that psychosis that resides from those woundings or traumas will, you'll gravitate towards that, which is the state that you find yourself in. And so I think that's where you get into looking at who you are and how you show up and what it is you value and what's your purpose and what your focus is. That will be a gauge, positive or negative, as to what you gravitate to as who you choose to be a part of your life. And you see it so many times in relationships where a spouse or a partner will get out of an abusive situation, but they don't get themselves well. They don't, take the time to invest in themselves and become the best version of themselves, the strong, healthy you, and you gravitate back into another relationship of what you just got out of. And I think that's very important in this discussion is the right people will always show up based on the healthiest, best version, strongest version of you, whether that's positive or it could be negative. So do you just keep, just bringing that into the conversation for awareness for our audience today is one of the probably the most important things of identifying who is in your life right now in this moment is a parallel to how you show up in your healthiest state of your well-being.
Yeah, and I'm going to double click on that. That's a great point. A little bit further, and that we're talking about so far as choosing your network and choosing correctly, but don't ever underestimate the impact that you have on others as well, right? Because you're an active participant in your group, your tribe, your clan, or whatever, and your actions, how you show up, how you encourage folks, has a tremendous impact, probably beyond what any of us recognize. And I can show, or I can think back to earlier on in my career, right, where I was trying to figure out a path forward and what I wanted to do and stuff like that. But some of the folks that I had the absolute good fortune of having as mentors and leaders that would provide encouragement and, hey, try this or with this in a very encouraging way. To this day, I'm still astounded and give credit to those around me that were able to see things
Mm.
that I couldn't even see, and able to provide guidance and encouragement when otherwise I would have just been left blind. The ability to recognize and looking back how much of an impact that had on my life and opened so many doors for me. So to your point, Doug, and to yours as well, Derek, time is limited, right? I think we've talked about in previous
Mm.
podcasts, back when we were younger, there was no end to the runway. But when you get to a certain point, you could actually see it. It's way down there, but it's down there. So choose who you want to, or choose who will be encouraging and growth, and also who you can help, right? And who you want to surround yourself with. And one of the things that I also want to click on, that I promise I'll kick it back, is that in a tribe or a clan or a group of folks, the ability to be positive, and this goes back to what you talk about all the time, Doug, is growth mindset, right? Is the positive part of the group is contagious, right? So when somebody is bringing, energy and vibrancy or whatever and showing up for the group, everybody comes up, right? And I just find that amazing, that the fact that, again, tying into the growth mindset stuff, is what we bring to our personal relationships impacts those around us so much more than we can ever imagine. And, I had several conversations this week with folks about how, we've encouraged each other, and I've been a bit of a mentor to some of the younger folks at work and stuff like that, and how appreciative they were. And I just didn't think they really even cared that much, but they were like super appreciative. So
Yeah,
Mm.
I was actually gonna go a very similar place and make some of those same points, but just to echo and amplify, if we're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, that means think about how many people you're one of the 5 that you're part of who they are. And like, so I know I tend to be Doug centric when I think about things, but if, just like I was saying, if you be intentional and step back and observe and say, hey, there's certain people that I'm trying to help them, or they're coming to me and spending part of they're choosing to spend part of their time with me. So like, to your point about mentoring and role models, and like, how can I make sure I'm being a good mentor to them, and how can I be that positive influence in their life? And I was going to say a very similar thing is, you know I had certain leadership roles in my career, and you don't really realize at the time you're doing it, or you don't, they don't often come back and say like, hey, you really helped me out. But like, when they do, it's so like impactful. So again, you won't know in the moment, but like, you have to be intentional about who you choose, and I don't know what the right word is, but to invest some of your time in, or whatever. And then if you're spending time with them and you're choosing to spend time with them, you're one of the 5 people that is influencing who they are. Just like you're saying, give back, and don't just think about yourself, but also think about how you're helping the others, right?
yeah, and just to put a little bit, maybe a little bit of melodrama on what you just said, not melodrama, but is the fact that those actions can reverberate through the future, right?
Yeah.
The positive impact that you have on others may change the way they approach their day, and they may treat somebody else with more respect and dignity, and that is a cascading effect. I don't think it's a network effect, but whatever. That there is a cascading throughout. So, Derek.
Yeah, I think as what came to mind as you both were sharing is influence is contagious. And it's contagious, whether that's in a good way or a negative way.
Mhm.
So, it really does, like, how you show up in your relationship with your spouse, and that energy you bring, or with your kids, or with your extended family, or with your team you lead, or in community with charitable organizations, or church, per se, if you go go to church. I think that how you show up as a human being is influential on those, because you have eyes watching you all the time. We all have eyes that we are in our circle of influence. The people we are around, we have eyes on us. And so how you show up and present yourself and hold yourself, whether that's positive or negative, will be influential and contagious on others. I think that's why it's very important for you to be aware of just how much power you have in relationships. And that's what gives you that power to choose who you want to be a part of your life, based on what it is that you value and what you appreciate as far as your core belief system.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I'm
you
going
really,
to go ahead, Doug. No,
sorry,
go ahead, Doug, please.
no, you really triggered something in me actually with that comment, which is like we've all taken a lot of training at work, and a lot of times it's like, hey, you're telling me stuff I already know. But one of those trainings was impactful to me, and it hit on that point, the shadow you cast. And again,
Mhm.
it goes back to
Yeah.
everything else. If you don't really step back and think about these things, maybe you don't realize it. And to that point, I hadn't really realized. So exactly like you were saying, like I'm doing things. There's people that work for me, or peers that are waiting for me to help them
Mhm.
under, guidance and other things. And like not being aware of the impact that you have can be negative, or you
Yeah.
can choose to make it a positive thing. And like the shadow you cast is so important.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm going to amplify what you both said. Is that I would argue that you actually have a personal responsibility as a member of society to present your best self, like exactly what you were saying, Doug, the casting the shadow, which exactly what you're saying, Derek, is that as you grow and mature, you have a responsibility to yourself and to your fellow man to be the best version of yourself. I know that sounds a little bit
Mhm.
philosophical, but I truly believe that aligning with your values, with integrity and character, and treating people with respect is your responsibility. It's not optional. It's not a courtesy.
Mhm.
It is a responsibility. All right, folks, and we are coming up on time. So let's do a quick round the horn. Derek, any closing thoughts?
Well, I feel like, just leaving everybody in a positive note, encouraging note, is you have it in yourself to shift. This podcast is called Self Shift. You do have it in yourself to shift, this focus and how you associate with people and who you associate with. But it does require you to become very aware within yourself of who you are, what you value, and then from there you use that as your compass to connect yourself with those that align to how those values. So I would just say that, as in closing, is it's a value system thing, and using your values to allow you to make the good decisions on who you associate and bring into your life.
Doug?
And I'll just connect it back to our happiness series within our Self Shift podcast. And again, like the quality of the relationships in your life are just a key player in your overall happiness. And they can also play a role in your longevity and all those kinds of things. So, be mindful of who you're choosing to spend time with, or who you're choosing to mentor, or those kind of things. And just also be aware about how people you're spending time with can positively or negatively influence you. So, again, from a happiness standpoint, relationships, the people you are intentional about spending time with, that's just critical to, having a
Perfect. Doug, you
oh, and
forgot
be
one
kind
thing.
to yourself.
Yes, thank you. We can't close without that. All right, folks, we're going to close this one out. Just keep in mind that personal growth and development is possible, and be curious, not judgmental. Thanks, and have a great week.
Hi, everyone.